Welcome, everybody, to Before the Commit, episode 30. With me this week, we have a special guest, Steve Thomas from HackNotice. We'll be doing a short segment on News or Noise. We'll be talking about Claude for Legal. With me, as usual, I have my friend Dustin Hillgartner. Hey, Dustin, how's it going?
Hey.
Yeah, so before we bring Steve on, wanted to just touch on this release from Anthropic this week. Not so much about the feature itself. I think the feature is just more of the same of what I see as somewhat of a disruption of the SaaS industry or just maybe even the legal industry, billable hours and things of that nature. So yeah, the short version is that Claude released a bunch of connectors this week for legal services, legal SaaS providers, a couple different skills. And so it seems like the pros are are in favor of Claude in terms of like being able to highly disrupt the legal market potentially, and perhaps allow for some smaller law firms to be able to compete against larger ones. The downsides are that, law firms are being fined significantly due to hallucinations. So there's obviously risks associated with it, but the tools will get better over time. So yeah, the billable hours, essentially the foundation of all of these like law firms, and the future of that like ability to justify charging like high, billable hour rates for something that can be done, maybe relatively cheaper, might drive the legal market to lower prices potentially. Obviously, things like litigation are much different than, simple paperwork.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And I try to draw parallels to an industry that I understand intuitively, like software engineering. And, the scare in the beginning that people had was that it was going to be replacing software engineers. And I think that, at least from my experience, I don't see it replacing software engineers. What I do see it doing is 10xing the productivity of a software engineer who's leveraging the tools, and therefore probably going to make them more valuable over time as opposed to less valuable. And then you get into like the growth versus value company. Are companies going to scale back and do the same that they did before and lay off folks, or are they going to say, okay, we're going to do 10x more and try to expand? So I wonder how that plays into the legal market. I also was very interested in the idea of like what you were saying, like billable hours. Like in my opinion, I feel like the idea of billable hours or seat pricing goes away over time. And I think that the pricing is going to be more and more based on value. Like you're obviously signing up for whatever service or product in order to get something out of it, something of value. And I think probably pricing will move over time to be usage based on value deliverable. So instead of saying like you've used this many hours or if we've spent this many hours, it's going to be more like we've done this many things or we've finished this many cases, or whatever it is in the legal field that they want to make as their milestones in terms of value. And you see this when you're building SaaS products nowadays. Like seat pricing doesn't really make sense anymore. When you think about agents using seats, like a good example is like in the AI gateway world. Like, do you have seat pricing, or does that not make sense because it's agents using the AI gateway? I was looking over the shoulder of one of my friends who's starting a startup. We were at a poker game, and he's running his entire company off of Claude Code. And I was like, oh, how many Max accounts do you have? And he's like, we got one. And we have like everyone's sharing the same Max account, right?
Wow.
Now, I don't know if that's allowed or not, but that's the reality of how people are using these tools now. And how do you do seat pricing when everyone connecting is via the API and it's all agents and they don't care about having a profile or whatnot, or and all the typical things that you would have per seat.
This type of for example, like in the legal industry, like a partner would bill out $1,500 an hour, and then an associate would then bill at $600 an hour. It's kind of like a pyramid scheme. But when you start looking at like you're paying a large retainer, and you're kind of delving out all of this work, and you realize that you know another law firm could essentially charge like fractions of that and give you the same experience. Like, I agree, like quality and data and all these sort of things are differentiators. Possibly still there's still a human element to having an attorney back you in a court of law or in litigation. But you know and I just say all of that to say that like there are other industries that are about to fall the same fate, like management consulting, healthcare administration, tax prep. I mean, I know a lot of people that use ChatGPT to prepare their taxes. Not suggesting that, but all of these industries are going, like, you have now a model provider that is now disrupting like industries that they maybe have some subject matter experts for, but it's not their primary business. It's almost like model providers become like the Googles of the world. Like, they own like all this real estate, and I say real estate, like territory in all these under industries.
Yeah, I mean, it may be that these industries can make a lot more money now that they're not tied to time as much. Because I mean, I might be generalizing and kind of being naive here, but you'd assume that like a law firm their maximum amount of billable hours is going to be 24 hours times their employees, right? So let's just say that that's somewhere in the ballpark. If they're leveraging AI on the intake and sort of the research, and their members can now review results and do multiple things at the same time, uh, not only does hourly billing not make sense anymore because you're delivering so much more value than the hours that you're spending in the traditional sense, but you can do a lot more. Like, you can do more than 24 hours worth of work in 24 hours, and therefore you'd think that the billing would shift into usage, or probably make more money over time as you can do more stuff. Like, maybe law firms move in the direction of like what you see as being alternative law firms, where like online will like LegalZoom or something like that. Maybe law firms move into a category where they're doing more of that type of work, and they can handle that scale now because they have AI agents at their behest. I think that everything's going to change. Just
Yeah.
like software engineering. It's radically different at this point. Like, I see like a line in the sand of businesses that are still operating in the model before, where they're having sprints and engineers are writing code by hand, et cetera. And there's like a new breed of software engineering companies now that are, what they're doing is radically different.
Yeah,
And I
for
think
sure.
law firms will probably go through that transition as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm.
So we have a special guest. I mean, this is the episode 30, and we have our first guest on, and really excited about our conversation today. We have with us Steve Thomas, who's the founder and CEO of HackNotice. Steve's been in this threat intelligence industry for a very long time, probably before it was actually a category. He founded a company called PwnList, which is an original breach monitoring platform. Bootstrapped it, sold it. Then he went to go and build and run sales engineering at Security Scorecard. And then in 2018, he co-founded HackNotice, based out in Austin, where you are. And so the platform focuses on the problem most security vendors ignore, the human layer. HackNotice delivers operational adversary intelligence for third-party risk, giving you the same level of visibility across vendors and partners that you expect from your own environment. So Steve is a 3-time founder. Strategic Cyber Ventures led their Series A. And with no further ado, let's welcome Steve. Hey, Steve, how's it going?
Yeah. Hey,
Welcome.
Danny. Hey, Dustin. Thanks for having me on.
Great. I'm glad you're here, and we're really excited to have you as our first guest ever. And let's just get started. So you founded PwnList in 2012, before threat intelligence was a product category. what did you see then that most people missed, and how did you shape that? How did that shape you when you built HackNotice?
Yeah, so Pwnedless was really a hobby site that just took off. It got way more attention than was ever expected. I think one of the core things I learned there was Pwnedless took a hated problem, right? All these security teams had to go and once a week go into like hacker forums and see what files are being shared and see if there's any credentials. And they're being told by management, like, oh, we have to cut down on account takeover. But they were in the world of SOC and tickets all day. And then they had to switch hats, go into the darknet, pretend to be a hacker. So teams hated this. And so Pwnedless offered it as just a service. You become a customer, you turn it on, and it did all of that for you. And I think that that's still kind of the situation today. Threat intelligence is still kind of a hated problem. There's way more people doing it now, but there's a lot of problems in threat intelligence that are just dirty problems. Like people don't like dealing with them. And so that's stuck with me. I really like to focus on the parts of cybersecurity that people hate to do, that are dirty and messy and like hard to do in any sort of sane way. And so that's sort of carried with me through all the different jobs that I've had.
So like a side question to that, like threat intelligence is like really a very broad category. I mean, I think most people think threat intelligence is like generic threat intelligence, like CISA alerts or Microsoft bulletins. Can you just kind of, for the audience, like enumerate a little bit, like the depth of which threat intelligence can go?
Yeah, threat intelligence, for me, at its core, threat intelligence is the entire world of threat actors and everything they do, right? It's like the crime in cybercrime. And yeah, most people think of it as a CISA bulletin or a bulletin about a new CVE, right? The part of threat intelligence that I've always been in has been around what are hackers doing, what are they sharing, and then getting into as much detail of how are they doing it as possible. And the how is always cloak and dagger. You never really know how things end up happening, but you can eventually do some pattern matching and figure it out. Threat intelligence has grown just like cybercrime has grown, and cybercrime's what the world's third largest economy right now. And so there's massive specialization. There's criminals that focus just on initial access. There's others that are a part of ransomware gangs. There's diversification. And so the same thing with threat intelligence. So I've focused on attack data, the data hackers are using to attack, and then the events, so actual break-ins, and then taking some steps backwards and figuring out how did that happen, right? So what tactics and techniques did they use? And that's been my area. Even that is a lot. It sounds like that's only a small piece. We don't even deal with vulnerabilities, but it's a massive job. Just because cybercrime is in its heyday and it's growing. And so it's just a constant struggle to keep up to date with it.
Yeah, so great context. For those that are not familiar with HackNotice, what's the current pitch for HackNotice? What's your platform actually do? And so what kind of problems are your customers coming to you with, and how are you helping solve those?
Yeah, so the big value that we offer is we offer a very different way of handling third-party risk. We take a threat-informed approach or a threat-based approach. So we're a large threat intelligence platform, consuming massive quantities of credentials and infostealer logs, PII, but we take that discipline, which is typically a security operations discipline, We apply that to third-party risk. So we're giving our customers the view of what an adversary would see if an adversary was to look at a third-party ecosystem. The big bet, the big premise that we have is that cyber hygiene isn't really directly related to who's going to be breached next or who's going to be ransomed next, right? If a website is a little dirty or it doesn't have the most up-to-date SSL turned on, we don't see that as being directly related to who's going to be the next big ransom event. But ransomware gangs operate, and they operate like businesses. And so you can figure out how these gangs operate and who are they targeting and where are they targeting and how do they go about it. And so we're really looking at this as taking an adversary-focused approach to third-party risk. Our big goal, our way of helping our clients is help them look from a threat perspective at where the weak points may be in their ecosystem. And then it's not if, but when there's a new ransomware event, we're the first to let our clients know, real-time knowledge, details about what happened, and even helping our clients better understand is there a cascading effect. What's very common these days is ransomware will exfiltrate data and then hold it for ransom and then publish it. And a big concern is whose data is that? If I give Danny some data and that data gets stolen, is it mine? Does that trigger regulation? And so we help with that. So it's much more focused on helping our clients get a better sense of how all these events, you hear about them in the news, how are they really impacting them as organizations?
And just as a side note, are you also tracking like nation state actors that might be perhaps targeting organizations of national security interest?
Yeah, we definitely are. So we track advanced persistent threats. We track ransomware gangs. We use ransomware almost as shorthand these days because it's the 2-ton gorilla in the room. We track individual hackers who sometimes are members of multiple gangs at the same time. We track shiny hunters, which wasn't a ransomware gang, and now it is. And there's even sort of collaborations going on, like Lapsus, Spider. So we'll track them all, and we profile them. We try to get a sense of who they are and who the members are.
So I imagine that AI has kind of supercharged this whole cyber threat in many ways. I know that I'm getting very personalized phishing attempts that seem to know what I did yesterday and try to exploit it in some way to get me to answer. What are you seeing on the ground in terms of not only speed from breach to attacks, or any other types of attacks that you're seeing that are new or maybe supercharged because of this AI work?
Yeah, AI right now in the world of cybercrime is an accelerator. I don't think we have AI on its own hacking. There have been a few reports of AI being abused to hack into, there was I think it was the Mexican government or something like that. So AI is definitely a party to all of this. We see it as an accelerator. We also see a movement from generic to specific. So it used to be phishing. Now everything's spear phishing, right? AI knows more about you and can pump out spear phishing faster than the old phishing emails could go out. There's vishing, there's smishing, there's deep fake video. We're hearing more about that. I haven't seen it in the wild, but there's certainly some brokers out there offering that as a service. So AI is making the attacks hit harder. It's making mass personalized attacks easier. I think AI is going to have more opportunity around CVEs. You were mentioning Claude Code and how developers are developing different. Same thing for finding vulnerabilities. So I think we'll see way more CVEs, And then not on the criminal side, but on just the state of the world, there's way more vibe coded projects out there. And so mass quantities of sites, apps that are lower in security than what used to be out there in public.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw this attack that came out yesterday. It's not really an attack, but you're seeing this tan stack supply chain issue that popped up where they're able to gain credentials through MFA spoofing and then essentially act as the maintainer of the repo and inject malware. And then a lot of these, I don't know if it's directly connected, but one of the attacks that we've seen is because you can self-publish an npm package, you can essentially like package squat like a package, and then if the AI model hallucinates like a package name, you can basically like almost like sinkhole it and then create a malicious package that eventually somebody might stumble upon.
Yeah, these are patterns that we've seen in cybercrime. They're just becoming way easier, right? So taking over NPM packages, injecting bad commits into NPM packages, we've seen it before. Even people resurrecting dead packages, we've seen all of that. It's just way easier now, right? And it's easier for building trust, right? You think of all these public repositories where people are contributing to them. You can have AI make contributions for days, weeks, months, years, and just kind of wait, right? It's pretty low effort to be a contributor and gain trust. And then once you have enough trust, you can sneak in the keylogger you're trying to get in there. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of really interesting things with code. And so I think code will keep being a vulnerable point because AI is really good at it now.
So I keep on hearing about info stealer malware. I guess it's become one of the consequential threats of the last few years. It's not just harvesting passwords anymore, session tokens, API keys, browser data. Why is this such a bigger problem than most security teams realize? And what are you seeing from your vantage point?
Yeah, so it used to be like way back in the day that a hacker would hack a site, get the database, usually MySQL back then, export it, grab the credentials, dehash the passwords, and then share it, right? And the big concern was credential reuse, right? I use a password at one site, maybe I use it at another site. Now we've got valid accounts at other sites. The InfoStealer malware is going about it in a very different way. It's all about browser saves, autocompletes, whatever is stored in the browser. And it can happen in a second, right? So it's not a long dwell time. It doesn't require compromising a SQL database. You can click on the wrong link and you're done, right? It steals everything. And so it's not just one potential like password reuse leading to valid accounts. It's all the valid accounts. And it's instant. I think that it's a combination of malware, which is pretty prevalent, right? Happens all the time. And then stolen credentials. And so you combine those two and it turns into a massive amount of data. We've seen the data that we consume. So we don't buy data. We just sit in a bunch of hacker forums and get all the files that are being shared. And with no additional effort from us, our data is tripled. And it's all InfoStealer. So just the sheer quantity that's being shared has exploded in the last 6 months. And I think it's just two different trends that merged. And we're right in the middle of the heyday of InfoStealer malware, which 2 years ago really wasn't a problem, maybe 3 years ago, but it's a relatively recent phenomenon.
And I can almost imagine that like the existence of provider keys is now almost like a little bit of a currency because especially once these cyber attacks are being driven by tokens in many cases. I know I've heard a lot of people, especially during the OpenClaw sort of heyday, that a lot of people were getting their provider keys grabbed and then bills were run up on them, and people had amassed a huge bill because of token usage from a malicious source.
Yeah, API keys have always been the keys to the kingdom, and now that there's a huge demand for access to AI and the ability to run up massive bills, yeah, it's a recipe for disaster. With how prevalent it is for everyone to be on cloud, everyone to use third-party infrastructure. That's the real value of valid accounts. And almost every ransomware gang uses valid accounts in some way. Some use it as a vector into the business, and some will use it to steal data. Valid account use has always been a top use if you look at like the Verizon DBIR.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, besides like valid accounts, are you seeing any other trends regarding, like, I remember there used to be this like they would hijack like your website and like use JavaScript to like mine for crypto. So I'm really curious if you're seeing like, are there like are they setting up AI farms? Are they like stealing GPU usage? Like, how are they paying for all of this like AI usage besides the use of valid accounts?
Yeah, I think that we don't see crypto mining anymore. That's pretty easy to catch, and it's more common for keylogger injection, right? So if you can get access to a site, or even better, if you can get access to one of these site plugins, the most common vector is keylogger, right? Just log everything that's put into that site. And we've seen some pretty massive breaches. There was like Cloud CMS. This was a few years ago, but they were just a JavaScript plugin for sites, and had a keylogger injected. Suddenly, thousands of sites were breached, and so I think it's more around stealing data if they can get access to it. Website defacements still happen, but I think the crypto usage is pretty low. But to your point, if I can get access to an unlimited AI account, I can sell that, right? I can go into the dark net and find someone that's got some giant AI job that needs to be done that's going to take a few $100,000, and now it's free.
For the illicit work that they're doing, do you see it being a cat and mouse game with providers, or have the criminals kind of abandoned providers and moved on to open source? Do you see the providers as policing this well, or do you think there's still a lot of leaks there?
I think that it's a mix. There's always been evil GPT. Evil GPT has been in use for years. When OpenAI released their open source models, they were jailbroken within a day. So there's some things that are hard to do with frontier models like GPT, but not impossible. There's still these backdoors, or still these exploits that are being used to use the AI providers to get done what you need done. And so I think it may be a cat and mouse game in terms of, they're not even CVEs, but like consider them prompt CVEs, right? Like, how can I exploit this prompt to get it to do what I want? But I think by and large, the spear phishing that you're receiving is it's an open model that's running somewhere, and it's jailbroken, because regular hackers don't want to have to trick the AI every time. They just want an AI model that's going to do the work for them.
It's quite incredible what you see nowadays. Even things as benign as like comments in your code are potential attack vectors, because you might be operating an open source project and someone submits code in a pull request that has a comment that references the dependency they're using and they misspelled it, but it's a typo squat meant to one day have AI wake up and be like, oh, let me pull the latest version out of that dependency and use the misspelled version of your comment, thinking it's fixing a bug or something like that. So there's like so many vectors now. I mean, if you're an open source project, it's like you've got to really understand like all the different indirect ways you can be attacked now.
Yeah, I think trust is going to go through a really rough time. I think open source contributors, I would not be surprised if you have to start like showing ID and do like ID verification before your code's even allowed. But trust between third parties is at an all-time low. Trust between employees and employers is at an all-time low. There's a lot of ways that AI makes everything easier, because it used to be really hard, right? It used to be really hard to try to like trick your way into an open source project. Now you can just submit 100 bug fixes a day and see which ones let you in.
Yeah, so I know that, I mentioned earlier about supply chain risks, and I just saw today there's a rise in somebody released like a fake open AI tool on Hugging Face. And so, people pull it down, and it's not for everybody. I mean, most people probably don't know what Hugging Face is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a repository for data and models that are quote unquote open, if you will. You can retrain them. Some of them are really not open. They're like open weights. So yeah, I'm just curious. You have more companies that are integrating AI into their stacks, SaaS companies. Just curious what you're seeing real time. How does the AI supply chain look now, and where might it be? People need to kind of have their radars up.
Yeah, I think that people used to have some level of AI resistance, and there used to be a lot of concern around AI risk. I think that's totally gone now. I think the cat's out of the bag. I don't think anyone is thinking about AI risk anymore. I think they're just thinking, how do we get the most productivity out of it? I was talking with an organization today. They have their own internal AI. They're not using the frontier models. They're not using cloud providers. They have their controlled AI. But this was a massive organization, and it was like the first time I've heard that. I'm sure big banks have that, and they're able to recommend to control what AI is being used by the employees. But everyone else is just using, pick your flavor, Claude, Gemini, GPT. And so, yeah, I think people are more afraid of missing out on the advantages than they are worrying about the security issues, which is bad for security, but it's also going to make security all the more important. Very similar to the internet, right? Internet security wasn't even a consideration, and everyone was getting on it. They were using it. They're making use of it. Security was added after the fact. I think we're in the honeymoon period with AI. The companies I talk with are more focused on how can I make use of it and I rarely hear any sort of AI resistance.
Yeah, one of the things that worries me is, that, I agree with you 100%. I mean, Dustin and I have talked about, I think Dustin does this analogy of like, it's a magic wand and everyone like realized that they could fly now. They have an Iron Man suit, and, they're talking to Jarvis, and, people are like high, they're euphoric on this tool. I mean, even, my father, he's like, creating images and, putting himself on a horse, like, and, but like one of the things that, I don't think many organizations realize is that if you don't, and maybe it's a little bit of an opinion here, that if you don't do something and give your employees tools, there's so many free tools out there like free ChatGPT, free DeepSeek, free Quen, which is the I think it's the model that Alibaba has. So or whatever it's called, Kimi, I think maybe it's called. But anyway, my point is like, I mean, do you see should people be concerned or worried about, forget about info stealer, like you're literally copying and pasting credentials and giving it to like, China, for example, like by copying and pasting to DeepSeek.
Yeah. So we've seen this a bit in terms of some of the fallout. We've seen ChatGPT handing over chats to law enforcement after certain events. From that context, the information you're sharing with AI is way more actionable and maybe legally a problem than your search history, because search history, you could just be interested in a subject and searching for it. With AI, you're telling them intent, and intent is very much a part of the law. And so we're in a world where people are just telling cloud, which is someone else's computer, their intent. And that's bad. From a security perspective, that is very bad. The problem is no one cares. Well, the CISO cares, and anyone who's trying to continue to be like GDPR compliant cares, but none of the average employees care. And so I think the smart organizations are directing traffic. They're saying, do this thing. It's our chosen model. It's ChatGPT, but it's enterprise. It's Gemini, but it's our Gemini. Do this, use it, install it on your phone, and then maybe use some sort of proxy or some sort of intermediary, control it, lock it down. I think that is better than what most businesses do. I think most businesses just, it's the Wild West. Employees are just using whatever they want. And then I don't think we're even in a world yet where we have like prompt intercept because it contains sensitive information. Yeah, I would be pretty scared about what GPT knows. And I think it's going to be rife for like insider trading and a whole bunch of data related issues. But at least currently, right, we haven't felt the other shoe drop, right? Like in cybersecurity, we take it seriously because we've seen the bad, right? If hacking was theoretical, then we'd be like, yeah, but who even does that? Is someone really going to break into my computer? No. Like, it's currently a theoretical problem. I think that changes once we have our first bloodbath, right? Like, let's say we have a massive bank that gets shut down because they had so much violation of banking regulation that like the regulators are just like, this is malicious. You can't be a bank anymore. I think that's what we haven't seen yet. And so we don't have the guardrails, and we don't have the desire to have guardrails because we haven't seen it go bad yet, but we will.
Yeah, I mean, you have folks using AI on their personal accounts within businesses. And like you said, this is not like you're using your personal Google account to make a search. Like maybe there's some information to be gleaned there. But one day your ChatGPT account will end up on pwned list and someone will grab the password, go in there. And these things are even getting better at memory. So you could probably just get in their account and ask, hey, go through the history and find me something about where I've worked. I'm trying to remember. You're going to find a whole host of intent and like problems you worked on, and maybe even security things that you worked on. And there's going to be a lot of wealth of information in there to be gleaned, or potentially even, things as obvious as API keys and stuff like that. But like you said, there's much deeper knowledge to be gained from these accounts.
Yeah, I think people would be pretty scared to share their chat history. I wouldn't share my chat history, right? I think that like husbands won't share chat history with their wives. I think that like people use ChatGPT as a therapist and they share way too much. One of the patterns that I've done when I've needed to talk with GPT about something confidential is I've done like an incognito, which who knows, right? They say they delete it after 30 days, but I've done like a disappearing chat. I've talked it through, but then I've also said, hey, I'm going to delete this. Give me the most dense text you can, fewest words possible, so that when I need to talk with you again, I can load it back in. So I'm basically trying to give it a memory dump so I can use it in the future. I think we'll probably see more of that, right? Like we need to start treating these chats as disposable. And if there's context that's needed, we got to come up with some sort of memory mechanism that's like sanitary, because right now it just retains everything.
Yeah, it's a good reason for there to be on device models and like, you know, open source models that are powerful in the future that people would use over a foundation model, or, you know, is at least satisfactory in comparison to provider model. Because the providers are never going to give up that data. They look at it as like a zero-sum game. They either win or they lose. They need all the data they can get. So you sell the CISOs every day. How do you see the difference between what they're scared of in the boardroom versus what you're seeing on the ground? Is there a gap there from what their fears are versus what the reality is on the ground when it comes to AI?
Yeah. So the CISOs I've talked with, at least currently, it doesn't seem like they're the ones responsible for data governance with AI. Maybe there's some CISOs out there that are. I think that might be more the chief information officer, right? Or maybe even some sort of regulatory officer. So the CISOs I talk with, they're not too focused on, hey, are my secrets leaking to AI? It could be a concern. I think their concern is like security's been understaffed for like 20 years. I think they're concerned about, am I using AI effectively, right? Do I need more headcount, or can I have AI do more stuff? So like every other department, they're thinking, how do I get the most out of AI? There's like 40 different AI SOCs right now, right? 40 different companies trying to be the next AI ticket system. And so I think CISOs are looking at their historical pain points and saying, how do I make use of AI effectively? But then the big next worry is attacks are going to get way more aggressive, sophisticated, prevalent. Like the internet's about to become a way more dangerous place. And I think CISOs are thinking about, how do I prepare for that? I think there's some CISOs that like are living in the clouds. They're like, AI is great. I'm just going to deploy AI and it's going to like protect everything. And like, we don't need threat intelligence anymore. And we don't need anything. Like AI will protect us all. What was that? A Claude model that came out, Mythos or something, where, you know, we're just going to have AI be the security team. I think that the CISOs that are a little bit more battle tested realize that that their job's about to get way harder. So right now it's about efficiencies, it's about automation, it's about what can AI do today to help me, right? I don't want AI doing change management on my production server, but I do want AI to triage a ticket and let me know if it was user error, or if it's not a real issue, or if this is a CVE I even need to worry about, right? So I think that CISOs are somewhat in the same boat as everyone else. The big difference is they know AI is going to be used against them. And so that's certainly keeping them up at night.
So defenders are also using AI. They're feeding threat intel into AI-powered SOC tools and getting automated responses. Uh, that I imagine that's only as good as the data you're putting into it. But have you seen what's the difference between the threat intelligence that makes the AI defender smarter versus intelligence that it creates more noise down the stream?
Yeah, there's a huge difference. Threat intelligence, again, it's a big space, but a good portion of threat intelligence was security analysts writing reports for other humans to read, right? The human to human communication around threat intelligence, it will not work. It's not going to work. Threat intelligence, to be effective, needs to be built to be computer first and AI first, if possible. So we've had a big initiative to make everything we do accessible to Claude and Gemini and GPT, right? We're releasing an MCP server. We've been deploying our stuff natively into N8N, which is an AI preferred workflow system. Threat intelligence is not inherently going to work for AI. So you have to work to make it come in a format that AI can use. And so I think there's some legacy threat intelligence that's just going to die off, right? I don't think you're going to see an 80-page report on CLOP anymore, right? Like a nice PDF with graphics and graphs and like profiles of like Dmitry so-and-so who lives, in Russia, who's allegedly part of CLOP. I think that you're going to see much more human in the loop, but computer readable, AI readable. We're even going as far as taking our threat intelligence and doing AI testing. Like, what can AI understand? And then how are the decisions going to be better going forward? So I think it's a complete rethink. Anyone who's been building like automation and APIs, they're on the right path. But anyone who's been building like slick user interfaces and like a lot of explainers, I think they're going to have a lot of work to do. But yeah, it's just a different user, right? AI is the user now. You were talking about seats earlier. Yes, seats don't work, but even building like user experience, UX design, it's going to be AI experience, right? So that's how we're thinking about it. Even within our work, like we're like, how do we test this, right? Because you have to use an agent to even test it, right? So it's a complete different way of building and structuring, but there's some companies out there that definitely get it. And so I think we're going to see more AI focused threat intelligence, AI consumable threat intelligence. Taxonomies are going to be a huge thing. Like we're eventually going to have to standardize on how we talk to AI, like what's the data format. None of that exists.
Very true.
Yeah, so you've raised from venture capitalists before. I'm sure you're talking to investors who are pouring money into AI security right now, or just AI in general. What do you think that they're getting right about the space right now, and where might they be? I don't want to put you on the spot, but where might they be getting this wrong?
Yeah. So certainly not my investors. I'm sure my investors are investing in all the right things, but I think VCs in general are just throwing spaghetti against the wall. They're throwing darts out there and hoping something sticks. Like think of how choppy the AI world has been, right? GPT came out and everyone's like, oh, it's over. GPT's out. And then Gemini came from behind, right? Gemini was not good when GPT was good. Now it's over, Gemini, and then it's Anthropic and it's Claude. But then China releases DeepSeek, and everyone's freaked out about that because So like, if you're betting on who's the incumbent today, it's a bad bet. Also, these models cost billions to train, and then we throw them away, right? So it's a very choppy space. I don't think we've seen a space where we spend billions on a model and then we throw it away a year later before. And there's a lot of hype. So I think that some of the companies that are the favorites today have done really good at being hype machines. I think some of them have done really good at making like a slick GPT wrapper and doing some automation around it, like being the interface between the user and the model. I think that the ones that are going to last, the long lasting bets, the good bets, are going to be the ones that have deep problem expertise and then use AI in a way where they're building guardrails so that they get reliable results. Because AI is horrible at giving reliable results. And so you think of the 40 AI socks that are out there. If we've got 20 of them that are just a Claude wrapper, it's not going to work. If we've got a few that are like SOC automation with AI governing the process and checks and balances and like human in the loop, right? If it's architected right, I think those are the ones that are going to last. And so it's a boom. Whenever there's a boom, there's a lot of companies and then a bunch of them die. Like, so I think 90% of all the AI companies are going to die, and they're going to die within the next year or two. But some of them will stick around. So it's tough. Like, I don't have the answers. If I had the answers, I'd be much richer because I would just invest in the ones that are going to take off, right? But I think VCs are afraid to not invest in AI. I know of like one who's been public and they've just said they refuse to. But tech is taking a bath. SaaS is taking a bath. But I think it's going to be the same thing as what always happens. The ones with deep expertise, deep knowledge, unfair advantages, the ones that build it thoughtfully, they're the ones that are going to take off. And also, like, it used to be Apple would put apps out of business, right? Like you'd have the dreaded iOS like announcement. Here's iOS 17, and then all of a sudden, like Shazam is gone because Apple just does it themselves. It's the same thing with AI, right?
Yeah.
AI is just gonna, Claude's gonna make an announcement on a Tuesday that's gonna make some AI company that's basically a wrapper that has 20, 40, 60 million in VC investment obsolete.
Yeah. Feels a little bit, I mean, not directly connected, but somewhat reminds me of the .com era in terms of, trying to, I want to play in the game, but not really fully understanding, like, what are you actually buying? Like, so the VCs that actually have the ability to do the technical due diligence and to actually understand what they bought, and not, like you said, it's like a fancy wrapper that can be disrupted very easily by like a model provider. Like, for example, like what we started the top of the episode with legal, a couple legal tools that were thrown out, and and a whole market gets disrupted in an afternoon.
Yeah, the VCs are not startup founders. Like that, they don't come from that world. Maybe 1% of VCs have founded anything. They're not company builders. Usually they come from finance, right? And so like they're accountants, they're CPAs, or they're good at reviewing numbers and spreadsheets and finding when the numbers line up with their models. But even within deep tech, the number of people that could actually make their own AI model from scratch, like, it's tiny. And you probably already work at Meta for like $1 billion. So there's a knowledge difference to be able to do the level of diligence, it's just not there. Yeah, I think they all want to play in the game. They all want to get it right? They want to be the genius that invested in the next whatever. But it's really hard to parse out hype and which one's pretty and which one's making real difference. I think it's the weird AI companies that are actually going to do really well. I was talking with another person in cyber, and they're just doing micro models, and they're just deploying like 100 micro models all throughout their environment that just did really basic, simple tasks, and they were getting amazing results from it. And that's not what we're seeing from Frontier, right? Frontier is big, bulky, does everything. And so I think there's a lot of plays out there that could work out really well. But yeah, we hear about like Vibe. Didn't Vibe just go public or something? They're worth a few billion now. So we hear about the big ones.
Yeah. So, if there's a CISO listening right now and, what would you tell them they need to do before the year ends to get ahead of the AI threats? What would it be? What would be the thing you would tell them to do?
Yeah, I mean, until we see AI data governance become a real thing, right? Until there's like a dead major bank laying out in the street, I think that the most important thing that CISOs can do is AI is going to be an accelerator. It's going to be an accelerator for the CISO's organization. That's also going to be an accelerator for all the criminals. And so at least there's a little parity there. I would just go back to basics. AI is currently not hacking independent. There's a human in the loop, which means that knowing your adversary, knowing how they attack, keeping track of major trends, defending against those attacks, it's the basics, right? So we're just in a world where every CISO is going to be attacked like 10 times more and 10 times more effectively. But if they're doing the basics properly, then they're going to be just fine. Also, don't give Claude access to your production environment. I've heard of how many databases deleted this week, right, by Claude. Just don't do it. So I think that like putting AI in its proper place, not giving it access to production, right, not letting it do change management on its own, avoid the temptation.
So some kind of human in the loop still, before you.
Yeah,
gotcha.
I wouldn't be firing your security team. That's for sure. I think that security professionals should be surrounded by AI, right? Every security professional can be 10 times more effective, 10 times more productive. But they should still be the ones pulling the trigger on these decisions.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, it's been great having you here, Steve. Where can people find you? Is there anything else you want to let them know about HackNotice? And yeah.
So I think we covered HackNotice in detail. We're really helping change the way that people look at third-party risk and threat management. We're going to be all over the US this year at a lot of conferences. The next one up is CEFPRO in New York. That's going to be in June. And then what do we got after that? We're going to be in Philly. We're going to be in Chicago. We've got, and I'm doing Sans Fire in DC in July. So those are the next few coming up.
And what's your website again?
HackNotice.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everybody, for joining. We'll see you next week on episode 31. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, guys.